Hey folks, my name's Nate Salzman. I'm with Jefferson Patterson Park, and today we're going to do a little magic for you. We are going to turn this plant right here into something quite delicious. That's right, we're going to actually be making a drink. This drink tastes a whole lot like lemonade. Now, before we get started showing you how to make this drink, I want to talk a little bit more about this plant right here. This odd-looking group of berries is actually from the sumac plant. Sumac is an absolutely fascinating plant because it's found all over the world. And not only is it found all over the world, but it's actually used all over the world. Different cultures have used sumac in different ways. For example, in the Middle East, sumac berries are prized for their tart flavor and are in fact added to all sorts of delicious dishes. Other cultures use sumac differently. In fact, they would use the leaves. The leaves of sumac have been used for tanning animal skins for hundreds and hundreds of years. In fact, if you've ever heard of Moroccan leather, historically Moroccan leather was tanned using sumac leaves. Another culture that used sumac was Native Americans. Native Americans would actually take tobacco and they would mix it with sumac leaves and smoke those two things together, and it gave it a different flavor. And finally, another use for sumac is for making a nice, tasty beverage. And let me tell you, it's quite delicious. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to actually learn how to make this sumac lemonade. I say lemonade in air quotes because we're not actually going to use any lemons. So in order to make this beverage, you really only need three things. First, you're going to need water. Second, you're going to want some sugar. And third, you're going to need your sumac berries. So real quick, I want to talk about sumac and how to identify it. Sumac berries are really easy to identify this time of year. They've got these nice red berries on top. There's three versions of sumac that grow here in Maryland. The first is staghorn sumac, which is sort of a little more fluffy. Then we have smooth sumac, which has got these nice smooth berries on it that are a pinkish reddish color. And the last version that I need to mention is poison sumac. Poison sumac looks very different from the other two kinds of sumac. One of the big differences is the clusters of berries. The clusters of berries aren't nearly as tight-knit, they're a little bit more loose. The berries tend to be green rather than red. And finally, the berries aren't in that cone shape that we see right here. They don't grow in cones, they sort of grow a little more scattered. Poison sumac grows in swamps and in very wet areas. So if you're in somewhere that's dry and you see those nice red fruits, more likely than not, it's sumac, but obviously use your judgment. When in doubt, leave it be. All right, so now that we know everything we need to know, let's get started. First thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go out and we're going to actually have to cut sumac berries. There's nothing to it. You can cut them with nothing but a pair of snippers, and you can collect a whole bunch of them really quickly. When I'm looking for sumac berries, I look for something very specific. I actually look for berries that have sort of a whitish tinge to them. And you can actually, if you look really closely at them, you'll actually see they've got little crystals of acid on them. And those crystals are really where the flavor comes from. So I'm looking for stuff that has almost like a whitish like goop on it almost. And that's really where the flavor comes from. That's all the acid. Then after I have all my berries collected up, the next thing I have to do is I have to actually take those berries and I want to remove them from the stalk. I want to try and get as much of the stalk material off because the stalks are high in tannic acid, so they would give our juice a little bit of a bitter flavor. Now, I don't need to get all of the berries off, but the more of that stalk that I can remove, the better tasting my liquid is going to be. Once I've removed all the stalk from my berries, and I have a big pile of nice berries, I'm going to then add them to some boiling water. I usually just take my berries and just cover them with water because I like a really nice concentrated mix. And I'm just going to heat that up and boil it for about 5-10 minutes. It really doesn't take long. Since most of the acid is on the outside of the berries, it really doesn't take very long for that acid to dissolve into your water. Then after I've dissolved the acid off my berries, I simply am going to take my liquid and pour it through a strainer. And that's going to collect up all the berries and leave me with just the straight liquid. And I can tell you right now that liquid is incredibly sour. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add sugar to it. And I'm going to add sugar to it while it's hot so that I can get the sugar to dissolve. And I'm going to add sugar to taste. And once I have a good flavor of sugar to acidity, I can then water it down to make it into something that I like. And then finally, the last step is to sit back and enjoy a cup. And that's how you make sumac lemonade. Now you can do things besides make lemonade with it. You can take that syrup that you just created and you could make a syrup for mixing drinks. You could take that syrup and you could add pectin to it and make your own jelly. You could take that syrup and, one of my personal favorites, you can actually use it for making an Italian ice. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Well, folks, there you have it. So I made myself a little bit of a Italian ice, Sumac Italian ice, and I can tell you, it's pretty tasty. Now it's a little bit more orangey and less pink than I thought it would be. I don't know if it's just this plant was a little more orange than other plants, but I gotta tell you, it still tastes delicious. So on behalf of Jefferson Patterson Park, I'd like to say thank you and stay safe, but also stay active. Definitely making this again.